this, because you see, we might have given out some information, that sound crazy out there. So we have to really, because we know the listeners there, we know who are listening to it. We have to take it like breast milk.
Yes.
Feed them slow.
Yes.
Nipple back and thing.
Yes.
All right now. We could go back to the idea of what we call Old Testament and New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
And where you just said that the Old Testament is not as old as we would think.
Right.
In other words, it wasn't written before the
before Mark.
Before Mark, yes.
Right. Mark was the first book of the New Testament.
All right. Most people would tell you, and most scholars would tell you that most of the Old Testament was written like 500 years BC.
Okay.
Even 1,000 years. I'm going to give it all 1,000 years BC.
Uh-huh.
To show you that it is manuscripts very old. Now, you are saying that Mark, which we don't even know name Mark, but it could come up to Mark then. We know that Paul was written before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, according to scholars. I don't know if you agree with that. That Paul, the letters of Paul, was written before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You give credence to that?
Actually, Mark was the first New Testament book written, chronologically speaking.
Yes.
Was the first New Testament. Now, actually, follow how deep this goes. We are still talking about something that didn't happen.
Yes, but in terms of in light of the information that is
yes, it is understood, okay, in the realm of theology.
Yes, in the realm of theology.
Or bibliology, yes, that Mark was the first book
gospel,
written.
Yes.
The first gospel, yes. And then Matthew and Luke.
Yes.
Okay, and that's why they're called synoptic gospels, because they say the same thing. They're synonymous. Yes. The gospel according to John, or what we call the Johannine writings, John, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and the Revelation.
Yes.
Those 5 books are what is known as interpolations in theology, meaning they were added into the biblical text centuries later.
Yes.
To twist the concepts around to make you think something happened that did not happen. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so it has to do, of course, with the divinity of Jesus.
Jesus Christ. All right. So where would you put Paul in all of this? Because I was apart from Mark, I was in my research. I found that according to what they're saying, that Paul was written before Matthew, John, and which other one is? Luke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they say that Paul was there. The Galatians was the first book that was written by Paul, I think.
That's the first I'm hearing of that.
Yeah, and then what happened now? We're talking about a next book, or books, that make up what we call now the Pentateuch.
The Pentateuch? Yep.
And you are now saying that all of that book, from Genesis to Malachi, was written in the same period as Mark. That's what you're saying, right?
No, I'm saying it was written later.
It was after Mark.
Yes.
All right. So explain to me how that information goes.
Okay. And the reason for that, again, has to do with the historical fact that there were the Khazars and the Ashkenazim.
Yeah. They
didn't come on the scene.
Yeah.
Until the late 6th, early 7th century A.D. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the whole Old Testament is a story about them.
Yeah.
That they want the world to understand. Now, one of the important things we must understand, let's look at a timeline here. Okay, in the 4th century, they had the Nicene Council.
Yeah.
Okay, the council that created Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you had, after that, 3 other major councils: the Council of Ephesus, Council of Chalcedon, Council of Constantinople, in 451 A.D. Now, the one in 451 A.D. was the most damaging one of all, because the Roman Catholic bishops passed a law in that council saying that no one is allowed to write down, produce, or even think or teach anything other than what we have decided as doctrine. That was in 451 AD. Now, the program still wasn't catching on properly. Okay? Now, grab how deep this goes. So what happened? In 500 AD, and this is so important to this whole concept here that we understand. In 500 AD, Europe thrust the world into what they called the Dark Ages. 500 AD. For 1,000 years, from 500 AD to 1500 AD, was the period that they called the Dark Ages, or they called it medieval.
Stay in the heart of a new city with book